here from Binghamton, from Solarize Southern Tier, and he is going to lead us through this amazing maze.
Thank you all for coming out today. I am the program manager for Southern Tier Solar Works at the Binghamton Regional Sustainability Coalition, and many of you already know me from previous things. And at some point, maybe we can go around and say who's here, maybe during the questions and answers, I'm thinking. What I'd like to do is basically two things. In the second point, talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of all of the questions that I understand from Charlene and Paige have been flooding pretty regularly to them about how this whole thing works. And then I'm going to do more or less the presentation that you'll see at a standard community event. I say more or less because, as Paige indicated, we don't have the details yet of what the prices are, what the financing looks like, or who the installers are. And as it happens, tomorrow, Monday at 11:59, that's the deadline for proposers to propose. And we will be evaluating those, inviting the installers in for interviews, selecting, signing agreements, and at that point we will know those things. So in terms of that, let's get right into it. So Solarize is not new. It was invented, as far as I'm aware, in Portland, Oregon, about 7 or 8 years ago. And the real concept here is to use existing community networks of trust and communication, as well as a few other things, to boost the solar market in a locality real fast. And that's really the bigger picture here. New York is in the midst of a solar boom, and we want it to boom faster. This is, I would say, the third year of Solarize in New York. There were a few before that, but we went from, in 2013, I think 2 or 3, last year about a half a dozen. This year I have no idea how many there are going to be. There could be a dozen, there could be 2 dozen. There's going to be a lot of Solarize campaigns in New York State. So what is Solarize? Well, it starts with a community volunteer committee. And we actually have 2. One in what we're calling DOC, Delaware, Otsego, Chenango, which is here, and the other in Broome and Tioga, which is there. And together, these folks have formed a steering committee, of which there is a subcommittee that's going to select the contractors, or rather they're going to make a recommendation to the full committee. And so that's the first thing, is a committee of volunteers, and I don't think I could say this enough, the leadership of this particular committee is first class, and honestly, there's no way that we could be where we are without them, so I want to thank you guys. The second thing is the trusted nonprofit with program manager. Now, you probably don't know me from Adam, haha, but the Binghamton Regional Sustainability Coalition has been around since 2008. And I guess that we have been trusted to run clean energy programs. We ran the Energy Leadership Program, partially out of our own bailiwick, partially at Cooperative Extension of Broome County for 3 years. And last year we did the first ever Solarize pilot program in this region. And we did it pretty well. We doubled the number of arrays installed on the residential side over the previous year in a matter of a few months. And so this year we are doing our first formal Solarize campaign, because that was really a pilot, and this is going to be much bigger. Our goal is to double the amount of residential solar that exists currently in the 5 counties in 1 year, which is a fairly big goal, but I think we can do it. And then the last partner, which is pretty darn important, are really good solar installers. And fortunately, we've got a bunch of them that are based in the region. And so the way Solarize is going to work for us is we've got 3 partner slots. 2 of those are reserved for those aforementioned regional installers. The third one, any certified installer from anywhere that operates here can be in that slot. Those slots, in theory, can accommodate 2 partners each. That is, in some cases, you have 2 contractors that join together to form essentially 1 team. We will see. So the basic program involves spreading lots of awareness, right? So we're going to have educational events, more than 30 of them, starting at the end of March through Memorial Day weekend. And at any point, and this can actually start even now in theory, folks can go to our website, come to an event, and enroll. All enrollment means is you've given us your name as well as your exact address, your utility bill, and the condition of your roof. And once we have the pricing and the installers identified, even if we haven't started with an event, site assessments may occur. Right now, anybody wants to enroll, we essentially give them two options. Wait for us to start, or we'll give you the list of certified installers in the area and you can go to it. So that's really what enrollment is, signing up for a free site assessment. And if you, I'm assuming all grab one of these glossaries. Believe it or not, as far as I can make out, nobody ever made a Solarize glossary, which kind of astounded me because we're not new. There's a billion solar glossaries out there that'll tell you about grid tied and PV and all the rest of it, but as far as this sort of specialized stuff, not so much. So we're doing that. That's going to be on our website. And in general, everything that you'll need will find its way to southerntiersolarworks.org, which I have just updated with all of this stuff. So the typical event, and there are three kinds of pre-deadline events that we will have. We have community meetings, that's sort of the meat and potatoes. We're gonna have brown bags, which are typically 1 hour lunchtime events at a employer site, typically reserved just for people who work there. So say at Suco or at a large employer in Norwich, for instance, we might do a brown bag. And there we're trying to pack 2 hours into one, so that's always fun. And then the third kind of thing is what you could call focus on finance, and the difference should be obvious. All the same people will be there, much of the same material, but we're going to spend a lot more time talking about the money. So those are the three kinds of primary events. There will also be solar home tours, which I can talk about later, but are basically what they sound like. People who have solar on it tell you what it's like. The other part of Solarize is the decision. So we will set a deadline as yet to be exactly fixed, but it's going to be in early June. And basically, you're in or you're out if you sign by that deadline, that is, sign a contract. Now, what we may very well do, because this has been done before, is towards the very end, and this could be even in early June, we're going to have some Q&A only events, only for people who have enrolled, so that folks who still have some questions can get every single one of those answered if they haven't already. And then things get installed, and honestly, the installation part, the actually putting it on the roof or on the pole or on the rack, that's real quick. That takes a couple days at most, maybe one, maybe two. But everything else takes a little more time, but it's still a lot faster than otherwise. So that's how the whole structure goes. Now, one of the big jobs for all of you is to get the word out, right? And that's really part of the whole social marketing approach is, as I mentioned before, people necessarily don't know who I am, but they know who you are. And if you're convinced that this is a value proposition you want to get behind, you can take this and other information that will be provided to you, get people to show up. If you intend on getting solar on your property, you have another self-interest involved, which is that the more people who are enrolled, the cheaper it is for you. It's a bulk buying system, and we will have tiers, and the more PV we get contracted, the closer we get to our lowest price tier. So that's basically how it works in terms of the structure. Now, in terms of the events themselves, I don't know if this is big enough to see. Let me make it bigger. And move it over a little bit. Or maybe make it a little smaller. Okay. So, say we have an event here. Are we going to have an event here? Probably is already one on the schedule, right? No? Really? It's such a cool space. The Civic Center. Well, I just have to say, I don't know if any of you are volunteer firefighters or affiliated with this place, but this is really nice, and I'd like to have one where I live. So in any case, people will come to an event like this, and they will be greeted at the door like this. We'll sign in, there will be refreshments, and they will be getting an enrollment sheet. The enrollment sheet will look something like this, except it will be prettier. We'll have our logo on it and so forth. And this will be duplicated on our website. Now you'll notice, aside from the obvious information, there's choose an installer partner. So one of the things that we're about is reducing soft costs, which is another way of saying reducing the costs of the time it takes to get people from square one all the way to installation, including what's referred to as customer acquisition. One of the reasons why those costs get high is because the typical interaction with installers and their clients can sometimes take a lot of the installer's time. That time has to be billed to somebody. So we're trying to reduce that, and one of those ways is by saying, look, you'll have heard from every single installer, you'll get face time with all of them, decide which one you want to go with. We're not going to be encouraging lots of different assessments. That said, there's nothing stopping you, but that's part of what we want to do. So everybody will get one of these things. They don't have to sign up on site, but they can. And if they don't sign up on site, they can go to the website, which I'll show you in a little bit. So the whole thing will get led off by me or one of my minions, and you'll see a lot of what's going to be discussed in a minute. We'll also hear from all three partner installers, basically the elevator speech of why you should go with them. And then there'll be Q&A followed by meet and greet, where people can do one-on-one, any sort of questions they have about anything at all to do with solar. At each event, the installer partners will have a table, and so will we. So we're going to need that kind of space. And essentially, we were going to attempt to get the follow-up happening within 24 hours or less in terms of, thank you for contacting us, these are the next steps. And then we pass this on to the installer partner that you selected, and they follow up with you to schedule the site assessment. Now, I do want to mention one thing that we'll circle back on later, which is that 4/5 out of all the people that get into this hopper will not be able to do it on their own property because they're too shaded, like me. I live in a forest. Or their roof's too old and they have to have it replaced. We can deal with that, but it may delay the process sufficiently that they can't do it in this campaign. Or their credit is not up to snuff, or their roof faces the wrong way, or whatever. So what happens with the other 4/5? Well, what we're hoping is the Public Service Commission is going to make a decision within the next month or two that will allow what are called solar gardens or community shared solar, which exist in other states like Colorado and Massachusetts and elsewhere. And this would allow you, for example, to either buy as an investor or enroll sort of as a ratepayer in an array for equal or cheaper than what you're paying now to the utility and get your power at a fixed rate for 20 years. So if I was a hard sales guy, I wouldn't be here telling you this because this is a pretty great deal. But the reality is that there's a lot of value to having it on your own property. I would like to. I've got a geothermal system. I can't power it off of my own array because of the aforementioned forest. So I'm actually going to take a quick pause here before I launch into the presentation because this went pretty quick and I threw out a lot of stuff just to see what questions that you have about this part of it. Any questions about how does PV work or stuff like that of a technical nature, hold off until later because I'll cover some of that in the presentation. Just the nuts and bolts. What would you do as a volunteer kind of thing?
I got it.
What you meant by utility bills, the electric bill, and for how many months would you like that?
Okay, here, let me grab that from you. I just realized there is one problem with the way we're doing this, which is that you all are going to feed back over there. So utility bill simply means your NYSEG bill. Unless, is there anyone in here who doesn't get their electricity from NYSEG? Right, so 1 month of that, the whole thing. That's what I meant. We can get other information from that, but we need that to start with. Anything else? And I should add anything else from Trellin or Paige that you would like to add as organizers in terms of what folks can do. Because obviously they can help with these events, first and foremost, and getting the word out for these events. And that was the main thing.
Yes, I would like to add that on this very table, in front of each and every one of you, there are sign-in sheets for your county. And you can sign up to help at any number of venues. You don't have to stay within your county. And also you can help by adding some venues in Delaware if you wish. And this is a great venue, so maybe this becomes one. So just a minute.
So as Paige is making her way to the back, I will sing a song and dance. No, just kidding.
By a few feet.
Could you tell us where we can get some more information about the solar gardens or the community installation? If we're going to have 4/5 of the people that are not able to participate in this program, that's 4/5 of these people we don't want to lose. They have some interest, they obviously want to participate. Where can we get the information about that? Not only this solar campaign, but we need some alternative information also.
So actually, don't take that away from her yet. What other information, because this actually is one of the reasons why this is very valuable for me. To answer your first question, it's going to be on our site. It's right now some of that information, and information about other Solarize campaigns is here, renewablenewyork.org. However, I'm going to make it easy for people and put links on our resources page. I will have to say that right now it's not legally possible to do this, but every indication is that either the Public Service Commission or the Assembly will make it so within the next few months. So no later than 2016, we should be able to start on that.
So there's this place where we can direct people who have some interest but aren't able to participate in this program.
Right, but what we're really going to ask them to do, we're going to say, look, if you are interested in this, check the box, and we're going to get back to you. So in other words, we're not going to wait for them to trace it down. Yes, we'll give them the information. By all means, they can do all the research they want, but we are going to self-consciously go back to every single person. And last year, we didn't ask them to check a box. So we're just going to go back to everybody who didn't get an array and say, hey, are you interested in this? So yeah, very good question.
There's a big group of people that we might have access to in the future that would not be included in this program.
Precisely.
I don't want to lose them.
No, definitely not. I think we got another.
This is related to her point. When Josh Fox came to speak in Oneonta, he was really selling or trying to get people to get off of NYSEG as a supplier, as it burns fossil fuel, and to go with a renewable source. And they had researched some and recommended ethical electric. And there are others as well that are 100% renewable, either local solar or regional wind suppliers. This isn't part of this campaign, but it's information that might be out there or might be available to people who come to these events.
So that's hello, there we go. That's a good notion. Those are what are referred to as energy services companies, or ESCOs, and there are clean and not so clean ESCOs. And certainly it would be better for folks if they for some reason can't get in on a shared solar array next year or later this year, or deploy on their own property to do that. I'd want to vet them first, or I'd want to see how they vetted them. I know Josh, I know the solutions tour and all that. I want to have a conversation because, quite frankly, the deregulation of the energy services market has not gone too well for residential customers, and I wouldn't want to promote anything that I didn't like, but I think there are good people out there, and yes, that's a very good idea. So we'll follow up on that. Anything else? Okay, so before I launch into that presentation, I just want to quickly show you our site. By the time we have our Omegang launch, we're going to have a launch at Omegang, people. This is really cool. I'm looking forward to this, right? I think we're going to have music there. We haven't nailed that down, but I'm a musician, and some people in the room I think are too, and so we're going to do that. So here, this left-hand side link takes you to where most things are going to be until the entire site is redone, which is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks to make it prettier and easier to navigate. And so here you can see a couple of familiar things. We have the flyer, and we also have the schedule. If you'll just launch, thank you very much, is up there. And those will be changed as things get confirmed. And enrollment is under sign up to go solar. This is currently way clunky the way it's laid out because you have to click again, but we're going to fix that too. And we also have a Google Calendar embedded that will also have the dates. I'm not too fond of this format. We're going to have something easier to read. So that's just a quick and dirty tour. We've got a Facebook page, which I would like it if you would like it. And if you are so moved to donate to us, I won't stop you. Contact button that gets to me. Resources, this is where we're going to be putting more and more information of the kind that's been requested just now. And testimonials, we've got some testimonials from some folks. Somewhere I had this, but there's one testimonial on paper also there. FAQs and financing, that's what it says it is. We're going to have our glossary linked here by tonight. And so that's what you can find on our website. So let me bop over real quick and start this here slideshow off. So as I said before, and I'll mention again, some of this stuff will not be accurate, and I'll tell you when we get to that. But it's what we did last time. So just to explain a little bit, Catskill, Mountain Keeper, and Brisk really sort of formed this thing together as part of Renewable New York. The point of Renewable New York is to be a clearinghouse for all things and information renewable, and to try and jumpstart things like Southern Tier Solar Works, which is the name of our program, and this is a particular campaign. Just go forward here. So once we have gotten approval from NYSERDA, their stuff is going to appear on our stuff. NYSERDA is funding our program together with Catskill Cooperative Extension in Tompkins County and Sustainable Hudson Valley to do solar, in our case energy efficiency, also for 3 years. And there's also a whole workforce and education component I can talk about later if you're interested. And Green Jobs Green New York is currently the financing mechanism we're using. I say currently because NYSERDA, in its infinite wisdom, has proposed some changes to that, which we are actually in the process of fighting. So I can talk about that too when we get to it. There will be financing, rest assured, but it's my hope that we will have the same financing available this year as we did last year. So this is what we are up to. We're collaborating with community partners to really boost the New York system. How many people in this room are aware of the REV proceeding or of some of the stuff going on in the energy space? Okay. The short version is that our old centralized, dirty system is going to be transformed into a new, decentralized, clean system. Big question is who owns it and who benefits. But that first part, that's going to happen, and it's really taking off. And this is a great time to be in clean energy in New York. And if you have any people looking for work, including yourselves, it's a good place to look. So we're going to be promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy for all the benefits you see before you, from climate change on down to the dollars and cents. And we don't just educate, we connect people with contractors and help them to get the work done. So some of the things we've been up to recently, talked about the campaign last year, you know about the campaign this year. I talked about soft cost reduction. For folks like Ken, who are in a semi or actual governmental position, one of the things that we're trying to do is get all the municipalities in the state to adopt things that make it easy for clean energy to happen in their communities. One of those is unified solar and electric vehicle charging station permitting, for which the municipality will get money. Not a lot, but some. So we're trying to bring down those soft costs. And then there's other stuff. And if you come actually to this thing that I'm going to be part of on Thursday in Binghamton, 10 a.m., it's the last of a 4-part series on energy, and some of these things will be discussed. Community PPAs, Solarize, you'll probably have enough of that from today. And later I can talk about K through Solar, if you like, which is a program for schools. That's the series, just mentioned that, just mentioned K-Solar. We are going to be doing this workforce and education thing. I also have information about an internship. Sorry to tantalize you with all this, but it would take all day otherwise. And then there's an organization that Brisk is a founding member of called the Energy Democracy Working Group, which is pushing on the aforementioned question of who will own and benefit from this new system. So in the presentation, there's 4 things we're going to talk about: benefits, the energy efficiency side with Green Jobs Green New York, the solar side, and the financing. So I don't think in this crowd I have to belabor why we want to do this stuff, so I won't. But I will in the regular presentations. $700 in energy improvements through Green Jobs Green New York. I got a geothermal system from heating oil. I saved way more than that the first year. If you're on natural gas, you're not spending as much, therefore won't save as much, but it's good to know that you don't have to worry about that sort of thing as much, because if you were using fewer units of whatever it is you're using to heat with, it has some shielding effect for the future. So, sorry to be Broome County centric, but Cooperative Extension ran the numbers a little while ago, and if we ever got to the point, which I hope we will someday, to 35% reduction in residential energy use, these are the numbers that would result. We should get beyond that, obviously, but we're not close yet. almost 53 million in energy savings. The 634 permanent jobs created are actually multiplier effect jobs, which simply means you save money on your energy bill, you spend it on other stuff that creates economic activity and therefore jobs. The 25 and change thousand contractor, 25 and change 100 contractor job years are from the work getting done. This is just about what the multiplier effect is. And then I think one of the things to emphasize with energy efficiency assessments is the health and safety benefits, which are sometimes not put front and center, but one of the things these contractors are about is making sure people aren't slowly killing themselves in their homes or killing their homes or both. And so these are some of the things that get covered, and I'll go through those in a minute. Climate, obviously an important deal, getting more and more important every day, and this is a great way to reduce that. And if we really got serious in this country, according to McKinsey back in 2010, we could, if we did energy efficiency across all building sectors, not just residential, drop our energy use by almost a quarter, which, you know, I like renewable energy, but the less energy we need to generate, the less stuff we need to build to generate it, and that's all good. So how do you do this? Green jobs for New York under current rules, I emphasize. If you have a property of 1 to 4 units based in New York State, heated with anything at all, that's the first thing you need. Now, one of the things that the energy assessment does is to hopefully find your house doesn't look like this model. The contractors who can work through this program must be accredited by the Building Performance Institute, a national certifying body that happens to be based in New York and is on your glossary with their website. They're the ones that run the training and certification, or at least they create the training and certification information and programs. So the blue arrows are showing cold air coming in through perforations in this house's outer shell and being drawn up through the thermostatic effect through other perforations in the shell where you see various ducts and other things coming in and out. And this has the effect of drawing your dirtier, colder air from your basement into your home and essentially having you heat the outside, which is not a good thing. So when the assessment gets done, there's a series of tests that are done to see what the house doctor thinks is wrong with your house, if anything. And so we'll go through those one by one. First is a combustion health and safety test, which will be done under what's called a worst case depressurization test. Essentially saying, is the monoxide that's being generated by burning whatever it is you're burning in your house going up the flue or not? And if not, they can suggest, and sometimes right on the spot fix, if we're talking about gas ovens, the problem. And in this neck of the woods where we have old building stock, it's very, very, very common. People think, oh, I've got the flu. No, actually, you've got low-grade carbon monoxide poisoning. So the other thing that they do is they find leaks with a blower door, which is a neat gadget that fits in your front door. It has a shroud and a fan about the size of the one in your dryer, and what's called a manometer, which measures airflow. And when they get this thing going, it sucks enough air out of your house, not at an alarming rate, but enough to create negative pressure, and you can feel the wind coming into your house where there are gaps in the envelope. And sometimes they'll have what's called a smoke pencil, which is a little device that chemically produces smoke, and it just hangs there and doesn't move unless there's wind, which is a really great way of seeing where your leaks are. Obviously, it doesn't take a professional to see that this insulation is wrong, but they also have an infrared camera where they can look right inside your walls, and the nice ones these days are good enough that you can actually see inside your arm in terms of hot and cold to see if your existing insulation is settled or if you have no insulation at all. They'll also check your appliances and lighting, seeing if you have efficient or non-efficient appliances and lighting. And they'll look at your ventilation systems. My house is sort of a poster child for what not to do. Had one of these things that just recirculates the air through a filter into the room. You don't want to do that. Also had a downstairs basement that exhausted into the attic. You don't want to do that either. Essentially, your moist air and or fumes need to leave. And that's what this will check for. How to apply. I actually have one of these forms in my bag. Actually, I have many. NYSERDA 2 Hits Credit has simplified the process so that you could fill out an application either on my phone or on your phone or on paper right here, right now, with no other extraneous information needed. The reason you need to fill out an application for this, that is the energy assessment, not to be confused with the solar assessment, which I'll talk about later, is that NYSERDA has to prove this thing in order that the contractor gets paid for it, okay? So it's free unless you make a certain amount of money, which is fairly high, which you'll see in a minute. Usually takes only a day or two to get an approval, and if you haven't already said who you want as your contractor to do that job, you can do that when you get your reservation number either in the email or in the mail. Process, once you get that number, if you've already selected your contractor, you call them up and say, hey, when can you come out? You set up that time, or if you haven't, you select it, you do the same thing. Contractor will come out, depending on the size and complexity of your house, could take 90 minutes, 2 hours, give or take. And this is a really good opportunity for absolutely nothing with no obligation. You've got somebody who has seen the inside of an awful lot of houses usually, come in and give you an opinion with no strings attached as to what your issues may be in writing, right? You're gonna get an energy report, and at that point, you can walk away or you can go forward. If you go forward, you decide what you want to go forward on. If you already knew going into this you want to get financing, you could have pre-qualified back here, but if not, you could do it here. There's a grant I'll talk about later as well, if you're income qualified. And then you get the work done. And like I said before, for solar, the work done part's 1 to 3 days. That's the easy, fast part for you. It's all this other stuff that takes the time. So in terms of qualifying for a free or reduced cost assessment, this is again Broome and Tioga, and you'll notice this says 2014 because I haven't seen the new numbers yet. And the whole thing is based on your median income for that county. 200% of median income in Broome and Tioga. I actually think the other 3 counties here may be exactly the same or close. It's Tompkins that's a little bit higher. 125.8. If you make more than 125.8, then you have to start talking about reduced cost, which ends the conversation for most of us. But if you have to go there, there's a discount like this until you get to $250,000, at which point you can pay the $250 yourself, right? And 2 to 4 units. You don't just do 1, you can do up to 4 if you wish. If you have a rental property, or 2 or 3, you can do all 3 of them. And the numbers look like this for that. I will once again distinguish this, however. This is the free assessment. The changes NYSERDA is saying they're going to make are not going to affect this. It's the financing, which will come later, that they're going to affect. There's so many different things going on. I just want to emphasize that this one is safe for now. Okay, so let's talk about solar. So solar, well, costs have gone down a bit. 1977, of course you can't see this, $76.67 a watt. 2013, and I would really like to get 2014 up here, 74 cents a watt. That's a big drop. So that's good. And just in the last few years, there's been a pretty serious drop. So mistaken impression number 1, people who were looking at prices in 2010 and say, oh, it's so expensive, solar. It's old news. No longer relevant. However, what is relevant is that I will say that incentives are in fact falling. So I can show you this later if you want, but if you were to Google the following, NYSERDA Power Clerk block, you would get a little dashboard, and that dashboard would show you some stuff. Residential, small commercial, 3 different parts of the state. Look for residential upstate. And what you'll see there, I think, because I haven't checked in the last week, but it's been snowing, so I don't think too much is going up on roofs. 80 cents a watt. I guarantee you it will go down to 70 during our program. Maybe even before we start, it will go down to 70 cents a watt, for sure. Because the way that the system is designed by NYSERDA, they've got $1 billion over 10 years for small and medium-sized solar. And every time we get to a certain megawatt block goal in the whole state, boom, drops down, boom, drops down. And it doesn't matter where in the state, we could do nothing here and it would just drop. So, you know, Staten Island's going gangbusters, Long Island is crazy about solar, Hudson Valley, same thing. So it behooves us not to wait around. And the really scary bit is that at the end of 2016, absent federal action, the 30% tax credit that I'm going to tell you about in a bit will drop to 0 for residential and to 10 for non-residential. The state tax credit will be unaffected, the 25% credit. There's another reason why solar is good, and that's jobs. Last year, no, it was the year before last, wasn't it? I hate these turn of the year things. So we'll have the 2014 numbers up and they'll be better. We saw almost 20% growth in 2013. And this gives you some of the reason why. This axis here shows megawatts DC and installations. This axis here, quarters from 2010, Q1 to Q2 2010, Q2 2014. Dark at the bottom is residential, less dark in the middle is non-residential, and lightest is utility. So if you look back to 2010 Q2, it's 180 megawatts, which is a tad less than just residential in what is now a year ago. So it's moving. This one I don't really need to explain. This is John Patterson. He's got solar on his garage. That's his grandson. Pretty much speaks for itself. So another reason why solar is cool is that there's an awful lot of it. And until the sun blows up in a few billion years, it'll continue to be that way. So this represents this big yellow block here, all of the solar energy supply that falls just on the land area of our planet. This tiny little square, black square, that's all the energy we use on the planet. And this bigger black square is our estimate of how much fossil fuels there are forever and ever. So, second misconception, this place we live in is just too cloudy for solar, right? No. So what you have here before you is a photovoltaic solar resource map of the United States, Spain, and Germany. Now, in this case, we see Germany, which is pretty darn dark. Looks like Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, except for this little bit down here in Bavaria. Why is Germany up there? Anybody know? It's the leading country in solar deployment, and it has one of the most pathetic amounts of solar radiation coming down on it. So compared with Germany, we're just, this is like Miami Beach or something up here where we are. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. And if you look at Spain, the northern part of Spain is still a little better than us, and for sure, if you're down in the southwest, that's really going gangbusters, but we've got enough. So what do we have? If you look at 30 years of ground source data from NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, in terms of kilowatt hours per square meter per year falling on the Earth, you'll see that Binghamton here is nicely nestled between cloudier Seattle, Washington, even cloudier Germany, and much sunnier San Diego. We get 73% of the amount of sun that San Diego gets. It's still enough. So if we were to cover 0.07% of the land area of Earth, that's pretty much what we need. That's the size of the Nevada test site range. So 2 ways to use solar, one of which is going to be part of the program that we are doing here, the other of which you can do in any case. And the reasons for that are few, but the main one is that the pricing is entirely different, and it's not really very feasible to combine the two prices. We're trying to simplify. So solar hot water has been around quite a long time, and as you can see, it doesn't take up a lot of space to supply in the summer your domestic hot water, or in the winter augment your domestic hot water supplied by something else, electric, gas, what have you, wood conceivably as well. Solar PV, photovoltaic, which makes electricity from the sun, takes a little bit more space, and that's pretty much what we're focused on here. So with the PV modules, taking in solar radiation, converting that to DC electricity, shunting that down to your inverter, if you have a single inverter, and some other time we can talk about microinverters. That inverter is a smart little box that is converting the DC to AC, among other things. That box also knows how much you are using at any time versus how much you are producing at any time. And if what you are using is less than what you are producing, it pushes that excess electricity out onto the grid where it goes to the next load, which is probably your neighbor. But it's not your neighbor that's going to pay you for it, it's the utility, and it's going to pay the net difference. So that's why it's called net metering, right? So your meter will reflect your production, it will reflect the excess as well. And this will be credited to you at the retail rate. And so this is reason number one why it's actually kind of a good idea to stay grid tied, because when you're producing a lot, then you can rack up those credits with the utility. And when you're not producing a lot, you can use up those credits and still get electricity from the utility. You also don't need a battery bank for that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ever get one. Depends on circumstances and how much you're willing to pay, because those cost a little more. So that's the basic setup. Now, unlike the shade issue or the cost from 2010 issue, these are real issues. So do you have a place on your property that is unshaded and facing the right way? If yes, that's good. If no, not so good. So south is best. Southeast or southwest is not bad. East or west, if you have a gentle slope on your roof, is also doable. And then you can do pole mounted and ground mounted, which I'll get to. So you really want to have minimal shading. Can you technically put a solar array in a shaded space? Yes, but NYSERDA will discount your incentive, and it will discount it to a point where you won't hardly get any if you have too much shade, because they don't want to encourage that, basically. Electric bill. Okay, so roof mounted, obviously less structure, less metal, less concrete, less money. Pole mounted, in the ground, in concrete, more money. But you can adjust them if you like, and they're pretty accessible. This is sort of in the middle, price-wise, also very accessible. Yeah, I need to change this, but this is more or less what's on the website with some tweaks. And really, the idea is to learn how it works, to make a commitment to at least learn your particular situation with no obligation, get other people to do the same, get your evaluation, and then if it makes sense for you, then at that point you can say, all right, I'll sign a contract and go forward, get the system installed. All right, so these numbers are last year's numbers. I repeat, last year's numbers, not this year's numbers. We will know those numbers once we have our new set of installer partners. However, last year, we had some numbers that look like this. $24,000, the gross cost of a typical 7,000 watt roof mounted system, $350 a watt. So, typical. How many people here have more than 2 people in your home? Raise your hand. All right, for those of you who didn't, the chances that you're going to need a 7K system are pretty darn low. I, on the other hand, have a 5 and 9-year-old girl, and my electric costs are likely to go up, right? So just keep that in mind. So at the moment, with our 80 cents a watt incentive, knock $5,600 right off the top, and so we're down to net $18,900. Assuming, and as a non-tax advising, non-accountant person, this is very unofficial, assuming you can take this amount of tax credits, it then knocks down to $8,505 as a net cost to you, which is very much more attractive than $24,500. Obviously, you need to talk to your accountant, tax professional, or what have you to confirm those numbers. If you want other stuff, like a ground mount at the time of our campaign in 2014, these were the adder costs. That is, you add these things, it costs this much more per watt, 60 cents a watt per ground mount, made in USA, 15 cents high efficiency, $1. I should hasten to add that within 2-3 years, we will have made in the USA panels coming from where?
Buffalo.
Yes. We're going to have probably the biggest PV manufacturing plant in North America, just over in Buffalo. Will that affect our costs? I don't know, but we'll find out. All right, financing options. We're going to get more deeply into this. Just a word about leasing versus buying, because there's been a lot of controversy about leasing, and I think it's good that the buyer does beware. If you can't take those tax credits, take a look at that amount to pay or finance. That's really the biggest case for leasing right there. There are other cases, that's the biggest case. That said, if you're gonna lease, my preference is lease through a local installer that's been in business a good long time, who is sort of their agent. That's just my bias. There's also other ways to finance other than NYSERDA, which is a good thing, because as you're gonna learn in a minute, this may change. So let's talk money. For all of these things, where there's no difference between solar and other energy efficiency measures, I won't say anything, but where there are, I will. So there's no down payments with the Green Jobs for New York financing through the state of New York, provided nothing changes with NYSERDA. Loan amounts range you see before you. These are fixed rate, unsecured loan terms, 5, 10, or 15 years. Two kinds of loans. Energy Smart is a standard unsecured loan, 3.99 or 3.49% on autopay. On-bill recovery, OBR, or on-bill finance, as it's sometimes referred to, 3.5% interest. And this is paid on your utility bill, major utility bill, not municipal, but major. And I've got one of these. That's how I paid for my insulation and geothermal system. And in this last page of my NYSEG bill, there it is, the extra charge. Nice thing about this, if I were to sell my home, I can transfer that debt. In terms of loan qualifications, it's relatively straightforward, not all that different from typical loan qualifications. Now, here's where we get to the first thing that's not available for solar, but is available for all other energy improvements that NYSERDA is sanctifying, or sanctioning, I should say. Once again, being Broome and Tioga-centric, we have a case or series of cases of household size. Eligibility is dependent on income and size. It's the area median income for your county that determines this. So if you qualify, 50% off total costs up to $5,000, not counting solar PV. This is not for solar PV. Four-person family, for example, if you make under 65,507, you qualify. So let's take a look now at all three kinds of scenarios, one of which I have not yet mentioned. We're looking at, again, the residential sector, 1 to 4 units. Broome County, 4-person household, our old friend 65,507 and above, or just above, I should say. Financing only, no grants. 65,507 down to 50,140,184, which is 60% of area median income for those counties. You can get that assisted home performance grant for non-solar energy improvements. If you make less than or equal or 50,184, you can qualify for free programs, weatherization or Empower, also not solar. That may change soon. So last slide. If you are a landlord, in this case, a small-time landlord of a 1 to 4 unit building, there's a thing you can do which takes your tenants' income, if they fall in that 60 to 80 range, and you, in fact, can qualify for the home performance, the assisted home performance incentives. Essentially, the tenant would provide the income information to the lender, not to you. One thing, though, you can't use on-bill recovery as a landlord if the bill is in your tenant's name. You must use the other loan, the home performance loan. Now, this is the last slide, but I'm going to say two things about financing. One is that NYSERDA has decided on April 1st that for solar PV only, this loan package goes away for market rate customers. That is everybody above 80% of area median income. Just goes away, boom. What would you use instead? You'd use the financing that solar companies in other states and in this state have been using all along. These rates are reasonably good. I don't think they're as low as the state rates. As far as all the other measures, it is possible that on July 1st, the same thing will happen for all other energy improvements, but NYSERDA has emphasized and re-emphasized this will only occur on the assumption that they identify at least 2 very good statewide lenders to pick up the slack. So we have to sort of stay tuned for that one. And that's where it all ends. So at this point, I am done, and we can just completely throw this open for questions. Mr. Fogarty.
Good. I'm Ken Fogarty. I was interested in your comments on leasing and tax credits. It's understandable that if a person cannot use tax credits, they would go to a leasing program. And on the other hand, you can lease and use the tax credits at the same time. So it might be to a person's advantage to go lease and use the tax credits. One does not exclude the other. In New York State, the law was clarified in the year 2012. And when you file your taxes, there's a little box that you check that says, did you lease or did you purchase? You check the lease box and you continue going along and you do get the tax credit.
So just to be clear, are you saying that I could take a federal tax credit as a lessee if you, the leasing company, also took the same tax credit?
I don't know
Okay.
about that question, but TurboTax is what I use.
Okay.
And I'm not responsible if another person took the tax credit. But
None of us are.
It simply says, what was your cost out of pocket?
I see.
And you check the box and you get the 30% tax credit.
So I think that I'm going to need to check into this, obviously, and see what the different options are,
Right.
so that, you know, it may be, I've always wondered about the state tax credit, but I think the federal tax credit's either you or me. Yeah,
Well,
I appreciate
in
that.
2012, it was clarified by the state of New York, saying that leasing is fine and you can take the 25%.
The 25, okay.
But the federal TurboTax walks you right through it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have a question in the middle.
So with climate change getting worse and worse, why are these incentives declining and going away?
That's a very good question. So there are, I would say, very broadly speaking, two philosophies about how we get from our current rather pathetically low usage of renewable energy to build out, to scale, right? We all say we want to get to scale. What the folks that are pitching for these incentives to reduce will tell you is that the government does not, that is the state government, which is what we're talking about here, sadly, because the federal government is, well, you know where it is. The state government doesn't have the money to bankroll the billions and billions and billions of investment that is needed to do that. And that's strictly true. The big question comes, how fast do we move there, and how much do they really not have? So, in the view of some of us, we want to be very cautious. We want to maintain and possibly even increase levels of subsidies until such time as we see that private markets are in fact able to scale us up. And if we're on the losing side of that argument initially, and we want to say, look, if this isn't working real quick, then you admit that your thing didn't work the way you thought it was, and we're going to go back with our thing. So that's sort of the general thrust. There are those who will tell you that we may be dealing with regulatory capture or this or that in terms of Wall Street and the utilities, which may or may not be true. I actually do believe that the state's leadership does care a lot about getting there, how they get there, how we get there. That's, I think, where we have some differences of opinion and where citizens weighing in on that would be useful. So I guess where I'm specifically talking about here with the green jobs financing, we are of the opinion, we being the Energy Democracy Working Group, a lot of unions, not an insignificant number of the Assembly and some Senate representatives, environmental groups and so forth, that the market is not yet ready to provide loans at a sufficiently low level for us to not reduce the number of people that can qualify, A. B, while we totally agree that more of the state's resources should be directed at lower and moderate income folks, which is, by the way, what's happening here, right? They're saying, sorry, market rate people, although they said that too low for my taste, this is going to the LMI folks' problem. Right now, the qualifying criteria for the loans is such that there's not too many folks in the 60 to 80% range that actually do qualify for the loans. Our view is this: the Clean Energy Fund is coming in 2016. It's going to do some good stuff, which is going to take all of the different pots of money and put them in one pot, which makes things much less complicated for everybody. And it is also going to focus more heavily on the roughly 40% of New Yorkers that fit into this under 80% bracket. Our view is, though, that that is not ready yet, and that 2015 is not the time to be making a single change. Once the Clean Energy Fund is there, once the low and moderate income programs, especially for solar, are actually working, then by all means, bring in the better lenders, but not now. So that was on the record anyway, I guess. Yes.
This might be slightly off theme, but could you say something about K through solar?
Oh, I love saying things about K through solar. So K through solar is a program that the governor announced about a year ago. It is now up and running in the enrollment phase. And as certainly Ken, and not only Ken is aware, schools, any district, anywhere in the state can go to the K-Solar website, you can Google it and get there, very easily enroll there. They'll ask you for a little bit of information about your energy bills and energy use, and you will be getting a quote through the New York Power Authority's selected contractors once the contractors are selected, which is gonna happen probably next month. So I'm actually part of a group of people working with NYSERDA Edge contractors and others that is really trying to get every single solitary school in this region to at least go to the website and do it. I mean, I guess for somebody who is not an employee of the New York State Department of Education or of one of the local districts, I know about as well as anybody, the situation for public educators right now is pretty bad. They're very, very busy. Superintendents are very, very busy, but this is something that will literally take an hour of their time at most, and actually it wouldn't be the superintendent, it'd probably be the facilities manager, and at least you get the quote, at least do that. So if it in fact comes back that you can equal or less, if you can have an electric rate for 20 years equal to or less than your current rate, that would be good. The other good thing is that you can, through the contractors, there'll be a subcontractor that'll do curricular work. There'll be free money in it, so to speak, for teacher training, professional education, so that you can use this as a teachable moment for students in your STEAM or STEM programs or elsewhere. And in our area, the one school district I'm aware of that has sort of taken the bull by the horns pre-K solar is Chenango Forks. Chenango Forks has 4 arrays on 4 buildings, and they're still signing up for K solar. They have not gotten enough. And Bernie McDermott, who's the head of facilities over there, came and spoke at our last forum. And so, you know, we want to talk this up. We want to get people out there doing this. And I guess I'm going to be talking to the Board of Supervisors next week, and I'm going to be pitching that there. So, you know, I guess my feeling is if it takes you almost no time to do it, what's the harm in getting the quote, right? Yes. This is one of our important worker bees.
Yeah, we're trying to get Adam to present at the supervisors BOCES meeting in March about what case.
The answer is no. I have not yet been contacted, and this is one of the things that we're doing. So Michael Strait, who's one of the EDGE coordinators for our region, and I want to get on the agendas of the monthly meetings of district supervisors that occur at each of the 4, I'd say 4, it's 5 BOCES in our region. TST BOCES doesn't need our help, actually, they're all set. But the BOCES that covers this part of the state has a meeting on March 11th. We'd purely love to be there. Broome Tioga has one, and so do the folks at GST BOCES. And so that's one of the ways we're hoping to get the word out, because as far as I am aware, the only way these superintendents have been told about this is an email in October through their professional association, and I think they get a lot of emails. Ken?
What I've drawn up is the thinking that people would ask the question when they come to our Solarize thing about the K-Solar. So I have a little packet with 4 things in it. It has the frequently asked questions, etc. So if anybody, I have 3 spare ones if you want one. And they are important because at my town board meeting, a young lady came up to me and she said, I spoke to my superintendent at a nearby school district, and she said it's too late to qualify for that it's been closed.
That's not true.
I know that's not true, so I called that particular superintendent's office and got no reply back. I've called several times, and I've called my local one and gotten back. Nobody got back. So I think I'll hand this to the person who's in that school district, and she can deliver it to her superintendent.
Yeah, I do think that at this point, we'll do what we can, of course, but for those folks who have any connections at all, even with the building principal, with anybody, at least to find out, is the facilities manager where, is the superintendent where? And here's the thing, if you go on that site that Ken has thoughtfully printed out, it actually says if you go on the market and get a good quote and you like your quote, by all means, do it. So, NYPA is not really about being exclusive. They're about getting solar up on schools. So, I'm a little perplexed, but hopefully we can make some headway on that.
Hi, would you mind repeating the steps for the home evaluation? Thank you.
I'll go back to our website here. Actually, let's go back to the website. So there's really only a couple things you need to do. So you enroll either on our website or on paper. And once that happens, if we're doing it through the program, which we can't do yet, you will have chosen a particular installer, say installer A. So we will send that information over to installer A, and installer A will contact you very rapidly to set up an appointment to come out and look at your place. I can tell you right now that either myself or one of my minions or installer A will go on Google Earth or Bing or both, and they will look at your property. They'll go on the tax map and they'll make sure that we're looking at the right place, just to get a feel for things. And if we cannot see your house at all for the trees, the first thing that may happen is a phone conversation saying, well, we can come out, but is this an accurate representation of your house that I'm seeing here? Because, maybe you cut down 27 trees. But when we do those pre-qualifying things, it's generally an A, an F, or a C. And the C is a judgment call thing, right? But Fs are generally a situation like at my house, it would be about 27 trees that would have to come down. We're not about encouraging people to do those things. If it's one, yeah, maybe, if you want to. So that's what happens, and then someone comes out and they've got this really neat gadget that allows you to see the shade analysis of any spot that you're standing on year-round at any particular time of the year. So they do that shade analysis. They will measure your roof, and they will also look at the angle of the roof, if that's where you're putting it. Yes?
Is it an occurrence, does it happen frequently where they'll use like your barn roof?
Oh, you can definitely use your barn roof.
Have a perfect location.
Barn roof is great.
To feed our home, I think.
As long as your barn isn't like a mile from your house, which it usually is not, barn roofs are great. As long as the barn roof is in good shape and it's facing the right direction, it's big enough, barn roofs are fantastic. Barn roofs are beloved of solar installers because generally people are not quite as fussy about the aesthetics of their barn roof as they are about their house, for instance. And barn roofs don't have as much stuff on the top typically in terms of penetrations and things that could shade other things. So barn roofs are really good. Garages are good too, if they're big enough.
I just want to turn it back, since everybody in this room is probably already sold on solar, and what we're here to do is to reach out to our communities. Can you tell us a little bit about what worked in Broome and Tioga?
Sure.
And how best to, you've given us some of the talking points, right? It's not true. Steve Ellsworth has presented to his...
Is that Steve Ellsworth?
Yes. Yeah. Has presented to his board, and they've said, you can't do solar around here. Right. So
I got you.
How do we reach out? How do we keep good
So a couple things. I think that, we have in our FAQs that isn't true, but I think what I'll do is I'll put a couple links up there with some really solid websites saying why that isn't true, in terms of, I'm assuming that the issue was too much, not enough sun. Is that the issue? Too cloudy, yeah. Another thing you'll hear is about snow, and actually this winter being somewhat atypical. The deal about snow, and I have a slide for that, is that the months where there's lots of snow are also the months where there's not much sun, so the production you lose December through February is not huge in the scheme of things. But to get to your main point, so what we did was we got a lot of what's called earned media, and you're already doing this. In other words, you're already out there talking to people, and you have events, you invite reporters and send press releases. When we do the Omegang thing, even though Cooperstown is kind of far from where most of the TV stations are based, I think we can get some to show up, so we're going to pull out a lot of the stops for that. But I think most importantly are the church bulletins, the League of Women Voter newsletters, the Facebook pages, both your own and your organization's Facebook pages, the word of mouth with these things, going to the Rotary, going to the Elks, go to the Lions, standing up for 2 minutes and saying, so we've got this program going on. And you tell them the basic, elevator speech, and then somebody comes back at you and says, it's too shady. And you say, well, that's not true, and here's where you can go to get information. And they say, well, I still think you're wrong. I say, well, you know what? The thing you can do is show up at an event and talk to 3 professional installers who are putting dozens of arrays up and tell them what you just said to me and see what they say. And I guarantee you that person will either not show up or they'll change their tune. And the other people in the room will say, oh, well, okay. So don't be the expert. I am not the expert. The experts are the people that are going to put the stuff on your roof. I mean, I'm becoming, something of an expert, but there's just really no question about these things. Where the question arises is your particular situation. How much are you paying per kilowatt? How much are you using? How much space do you have to deploy, if any? These are the things that are going to determine whether you save money right away, break even, or that costs a little more than what you're paying right now. And that's something no one can tell you at this moment. It has to be looked at specifically. You have to have the bill, you have to see the space, and then you can say whether your particular situation, if money is no object and you have no shade, nothing is stopping you at all. So it's really, it's really about the economics. If we want to save money on your electric bill from day one, that's going to depend on finding those things out, and you know how to do that now. And so I think the thing to say is that we're bringing you all this stuff free, all this information, all these qualified people, go and check it out. And nobody is forcing you to go there, so, yeah.
So what we're doing is taking the information that you're giving us and fanning out in our communities and encouraging people to come to these community events. Precisely. That we have that list of.
Yeah.
And can you provide us, a couple of the events that we want to do are Rotaries, can you provide us with a
script?
Script that has a few of those basic facts in it so that somebody going can sort of say, well, here are the things I might be asked. And here's
as you know well, I was supposed to show up here with talking points, but instead I'm going to promise that the talking points will be up on the site by tomorrow and will be in your email box by tomorrow. This is it's been very interesting. Oh, you will have tools. You will have so many tools. And actually, there's some things that you don't have right now. I should explain. I wanted to walk in the door with lawn signs, even though NYSERDA's said they're going to give us all this money. They haven't given us any yet. So we're actually broke, but we are going to be able to start spending money next week anyway. So that's why I didn't spend $1,000 on signs for 5 counties, because I really didn't feel like I could take the risk. But you're going to have lawn signs, and I will see to it that nobody has to drive very far for those. And so if that means I drop off 50 signs here, I'll drop off 50 signs here. If it means I drop off 50 signs at Paige's house or what have you, find a couple of centralized depots or a friendly bar or restaurant, whatever it is, we'll make it easy for you. So just to dig in a little bit, Solar Tompkins also use lawn signs to great effect. Lawn signs are just amazing because you put them out in the same place you put them out when you're gunning for some candidate or other on the positive side, and people see it and it creates buzz. So there's the lawn signs. We're going to have the palm cards, right? You put palm cards in your favorite place of business or wherever you put palm cards. You can get the word out in any other way that you've gotten the word out for anything else that you've ever gotten the word out about, whether it's selling Girl Scout cookies or the aforementioned elections or whatever. So you'll have all that stuff. You obviously already have the web page. There's also a Facebook page for those of you who find that useful to get the word out. And we will be doing as much as we can on our side with the media, but where we've already counted on Trellin and Page and others is to get the word out in the more local outlets. but it gets more local still. Again, you belong to something. If there's a newsletter, we will give you the text that you can massage to put in it, a paragraph or whatever.
You've been commenting just recently on the nitty-gritty of evangelism, of selling to groups and so on. And I have a question. It seemed to me you were emphasizing as a main selling point the cost per kilowatt hour or cost per kilowatt. And it seems to me that that's not our main selling point. Or if it is, we could add other real peripheral costs into some sort of a calculus that we could add to that cost per kilowatt, and should, from health costs and just for one, and the cost of cleanup costs of other fossil fuel usage and so on. And if we're not really competitive at this point, or it seems to me, can sell solar on
that alone, yeah, no, I'm with you. That's an excellent point. The reality is that both for solar and energy efficiency, like a lot of other things, there are multiple conceivable selling points. It really depends on who you're talking to, and so you kind of, in this kind of a situation where you got everybody, you use multiple ones. I didn't really go into the other ones because I kind of thought I was preaching to the choir, so I didn't really go into climate. But you're right. So what I would say about that is that where we are now is neither the state nor the federal governments nor the markets actually do put a price on carbon, right? So even without that, an awful lot of people win on the dollars and cents anyway, but not everybody, especially upstate. This is actually why, to do a small digression, we were in a bit of a crisis with large solar array financing, or rather incentives and rules through the Public Service Commission until recently when we got them to turn it around a little bit. Because our electric costs, high as they may be, are a fraction of what they are downstate. Downstate, it's a hands down no-brainer. You save money all the time, almost every time, because their per kilowatt hour costs are ridiculous. Now, why is Long Island's cost ridiculous? Historical question. Why does Long Island have some of the most expensive power ever? Lilco. What about Lilco? What caused the Long Island Lighting Company to be such a economic disaster? Shoreham. Yeah, okay. Like I said, I'm preaching to the choir here. But you're right, in sort of the general public thing, yeah, you can stress the generational aspect, you can stress the environmental and health aspect, you can stress the greenhouse gas aspect, and on a little bit of a different side politically perhaps, your energy security. 20 years fixed rate electricity, that's you own, you control, it's yours. That's something that's not necessarily left, right, or center, right? So I think that's absolutely right. And here's the good thing is that when you're talking to whoever it is, you're gonna know better than I am what's gonna push their buttons, right? So go for it, yeah.
I think if you're talking to people who are at retirement age or retired, just fixing the costs of utilities.
Yeah, I mean, fixed costs are particularly attractive on fixed incomes.
Right.
But there is actually another aspect to that, which is that, say I'm, say 80-something years old, am I gonna live as long as my array? That's a fair question. And I think one of the things you can look at is legacy, right? You can look at, so this house will belong to your children, let's just say. Okay, so are they gonna live in it or are they gonna sell it? One or the other. Either way, it's a bonus for them, right? So you can say that. And one of the things that doesn't exist yet in this area is a real estate market and a real estate profession that properly values these things in a good way. I should actually mention something on the FAQ list. Currently, the default for New York state law is that you have 15 years free of any increase in your property taxes as a result of doing any of this stuff, unless your municipality decides to opt out. Few have, none around here that I'm aware of, just so you know. But getting back to the real estate point, in places like California where there is actually a real estate market that takes into account energy improvements, it's a bonus. People look at their energy costs everywhere, but their real estate agents are like, oh, okay, so this guy's got a lot of insulation and pretty low costs, and this one's got some solar. This one hasn't been touched in 20 years, so they're going to know, how to talk to potential buyers about those things. That's another project for here.
You may have covered this already, but I know you said that the installers have a certain licensing requirement. Is there a vetting process that you all will be doing?
Yes and yes, and those are actually not the same things. So NYSERDA pretty much mandates that in order for projects to qualify for tax credits and incentives, the installer has to be what's called NABCET certified, and I never remember what that stands for, but it is the, oh, it's probably the one that didn't get on here, right? Anyway, it's the, oh, there it is. You did, okay. North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. The point is, the important point is that this is the certifying board for solar professionals, and so if you were to take a basic PV installer class, which I've done, that gets you some way there, but you have to do a lot of hours of practical on the roof and other kinds of experience, and you have to take a test, and then you can get your basic PV installer. So there's that. But in addition to that, if you can see this for yourself, if you go on our homepage, you can see our RFP, which is right here, attention installers. And there's a rather lengthy document, and it asks for a bunch of stuff. It asks for what experience have you had doing what kind of solar installations where. Tell us about your sales team. Do you have the capacity to do this, really? And tell us what equipment you intend to deploy and what your average cost is for an average system, and on and on and on. And so some of us in this room, starting on Tuesday, will be spending a lot of time going through those proposals, interviewing the finalists, making recommendations to the board, and the board will then wave a wand, and here will be our partner installers, and then all these things I can't tell you, I can tell you. So yeah, I mean, that's part of it here, really. It's make it simple, make it trustworthy, make it easy, and hopefully make it real cheap. But cheapness is not the main thing, honestly. It's a thing, no question, but it's not the main thing. The main thing is that you can trust this thing is going to work out for you, and it's not going to take you forever, and you can do it with all your friends and neighbors. So that's, I think, really the value.
I have a request. Some of the places where this would potentially be viewed and would be best advertised are places where the word would be spread maybe once a week, maybe even once a month. So if we can have press releases, information that we can use out in the community to advertise this, these particular events, I would say the sooner the better.
Tomorrow? We can do that. I mean, and actually, there's already been some really stellar press work in, what, 2 different papers? I sort of lose track. Yeah. We're just going to basically take that stuff and send it to you. Smaller, perhaps. Other questions? Yes. Oh.
It strikes me that although it is sort of simple, it's also pretty complex with all the things. I mean, my head's kind of spinning about all the different programs that I didn't know about and types of incentives. This is not just real simple stuff. So I'd like to make a suggestion that there be something in writing at the community events so that people can kind of, you know, have something instead of just making notes madly and trying to. So
you're absolutely right, and we will. The difficulty now is that what we can produce for you has 2 deficits. One is it can't have the names of installers or any actual prices, and the other is that NYSERDA can't have approved it because it doesn't have any of those things. So I could provide you, if I had my computer up, which I actually can do that, some of the copies of the things that we've used in the past. And basically, well, I can tell you. So we have a sheet that says, here's who your installers are. We have a sheet that says, this is what the prices look like. You know that one slide that had the different prices? Broken down with and without the incentives. Why? Well, because the incentives change. The other things don't change. And there's another sheet too. But in any case, yes, absolutely. People will have paper that they can take back with them so they don't have to be, I mean, they won't have everything, but guess what? Presentation on the website. So pretty much anybody that has access to the web will not only have the paper they take, but they can go back and look at this. Actually, they can go and look at this too, because this is going to be on our website as soon as Eddie gets finished with it. We'll embed it up there. So you were speaking of introductions.
Yes. So I'm Paige Smith, and I'm from Oxford, and I have actually solar on my roof. It's not a great facing roof, it's pretty flat. When the snow lands on it, it stays there, but it still provides a whole lot of energy. So that's me.
We're just going to pass this thing around.
I'm Sue Sloan-Eric from Sydney.
Steve Ellsworth from McDonough, and I have solar on my roof, and I'm working on getting the snow off right now.
You're not climbing up there, are you, Steve?
I have a work platform that gets me up 18 feet.
Because he also does hops.
You're gonna, I'm assuming what you're saying is that he harvests or cultivates hops?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, okay. He does hops.
Yeah, I'm Ken Fogarty from Guilford. I have a 7.2 kilowatt system on the roof of my house. And my electric bill has been 0 for the last 2 years. What else? Oh yeah, 30% of what I produce I sell back to the grid, so it's a wonderful thing. And I have a good friend, Steve, and he's going to come over and help get the snow off.
I don't do hops, but I do ale, so we can talk later.
Thank you. Patricia, Keely, Siobhan, Anna, Katie, Dennis Higgins. We have solar on our roof.
Dennis, we meet at last. Dennis and I have known each other rather intensively on email of late, but I couldn't have picked him out of the crowd before now. And so I see the next generation of solar experts is in the room.
And our solar panels are clear.
Yay.
No snow on them.
Stu Anderson from Otsego. I hit 10K yesterday, or 2 days ago, and I've also got geothermal.
Ooh.
Trellin Smith from Oxford. My husband and I live off the grid, but we have solar that pumps our water, pressurizes our water, and runs enough DC outlets to keep us connected.
Chris Brunner, Chenango County, Norwich, New York. I do not have solar. Massive trees in the backyard. And my husband is looking at an empty lot and saying, we need community solar, we need to connect up all these neighbors on the loop.
Yeah.
So that's what he's looking for.
Excellent.
My name's April Leggett from Afton, and I've gotten 2 grants to help look at the feasibility of solar farms in Afton to power community. So I really want to know more about that.
So we have a little core of community solar going. We definitely want to jump on this.
I'm Stefan Chowski from Sydney Center. I'm interested in installing a solar system on my farm, and came to hear what there was to hear.
Excellent.
Kathy McNulty, I live on the same farm.
Jeff Strassenberg, I'm from the town of Sydney.
Lottie Marsh, Sydney.
Tom Gorman, Sydney, no solar yet, but soon.
Colleen McKinney from Sydney. Tom. Margaret Davis, I'm from Oxford.
Dave Davis from Oxford. We're going to be doing solar this year.
My name is Fred Lampier. I live in Oxford. I do not have solar, but I'm taking the first tiny steps of awareness toward possibly having on our 80-foot barn with great exposure. I have to mention I'm on the board of the Oxford Library, and we are putting in 8 panels, I hope by next fall. We've taken some big steps, and the payback on that is amazing. The figures we have, we couldn't believe it, and we've had a double check. So, thank you.
So this has to be the most what do you call it? SPC, solar per capita, of any audience I've been in this neck of the woods. Was that 7? Something like that. That's pretty amazing. Wow. So, I mean, the other thing I neglected to mention is that at these events, we very much would like to have a ringer, if you want to be that way about it. Have somebody like 6 or 7 of you essentially stand up and say what Ken said. It's like, got 0 utility bill, or whatever it is that's really exciting to you about your array. So that's marvelous.
We're champions.
That's precisely right. You are champions, yeah. So, and you undoubtedly know some champions not in this room, and it's always good to have more than one in the audience if you can. And champions can also host home visits, solar home visits. So I know that there are one or two being organized, and do you want to say a couple things about what's going on with that?
Sure.
Well, I meant tours, but more than,
Yep.
4, 5, 6 different
Yep.
places.
We've got, at least in Chenango County, we've got 2 that are scheduled. One's April 11th and one is May 12th. Is that right?
16th.
Steve?
16th,
16th?
I think.
Okay. And actually one's McDonough and one's Guilford and maybe Oxford. We're working with Solar Tompkins to borrow some of their wisdom because they had very successful solar tours last year, and we're gonna not reinvent that wheel, we're gonna use their wheel, and so we'll have that information pretty soon.
We'll probably have a couple in Otsego too.
Right, 2 in Otsego.
Carnahan, yeah.
Yep, Florence, yep, good. Yep, so, and if you're excited about your system and you want to be involved in a solar tour, just let us know, let your representatives, and it would just be great, because it is fun. So, good.
So I have a question. Now I know you've got the Daily Star, you've got, is the Post Gazette, Post Standard? I was going to mix the Chenango
Evening Sun.
Evening Sun, okay. Any other paper that's
We've got Walton Reporter.
Walton Reporter?
And the Tri-Town News for Sydney.
Tri-Town News, okay. So the last two
Chenango American and Green.
Chenango American.
Oxford Review products in Oxford.
All right, so this is just making my case stronger that all these folks should be getting an advisory from us, from you, to let them know what's coming even before it's coming. So we're going to have 2 launches, the Omegame launch and then the Broome Tioga launch, and we want to invite all these folks to that, obviously, but you can put the word out even earlier, and as I think, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name in the back with the wine-colored sweater, mentioned about the press. Margaret? Yeah, so community calendars, all this sort of thing. And what we found was once we got started, the launch got a fair amount of press, but we didn't actually do nearly as much advanced press ourselves as you or Solar Tompkins did, and there was still masses of buzz. But you're already out in front, and so you keep this up. I think we'll all surprise ourselves. I think it's going to go good. And the other thing is that, we're going to have a certain number of events that are set up by launch date. It would not be at all surprised if we end up getting 1 or 2 more, particularly maybe in the southern or easternmost parts of Delaware County, because people look at it like, oh, I want one of those at my library or my fire station or my whatever. If we have time in the calendar, we'll do that. I mean, really the basic idea is if there's local folks willing to do the on the ground, it's not that big a deal for us to travel and do it.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody here knew that, we have a lot of tools online, so anybody who's new here who hasn't been hooked into those, we have a Google spreadsheet that has all the lists of all the volunteers, all the venues, the dates for those venues. It has a tab that's just relating to questions that people have, so people can post questions that Adam or anybody else who's aware of them can answer. Press, if you know of media outlets.
Is that this website?
That is not that website. It's a Google spreadsheet, so you have to be invited to do it because we're keeping the.
It's part of our back office.
It's part of our back office. But it's, as a volunteer, it'd be great if you want to add to it because it's where we're sort of pooling all of our collective information. So, and this, we can see this for this campaign and for future years and future campaigns. I mean, just knowing that this venue exists is terrific, and thank you, Audie, for pulling this together. We have 3 terrific venues in Sydney. We have the library, the firehouse, and the Civic Center, and everybody in this room has fed into and are booking those venues and finding out how many chairs and tables, and so there's a lot of back-end work that has been done, but there's a lot more that still needs to be done, and a big part of that is the media. Any outlets that anybody knows. I think we need more radio information in there. What else?
Can I just add on the radio, WCDO local Sydney radio will take your ad for like the upcoming event at the Civic Center for free under community bulletin board.
Nice.
You just fill out your information, give it to Shirley when you call or Craig, and they will announce it like at 5 o'clock for a few days in a row, just to get the word out at no cost. Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
put that on the,
We'll
fax
put that
it
in
in
as
as
well.
well.
Yes.
Yeah. Fax it in.
Yes.
So all of those things, right, this is why Adam turned to us. Because for him to do this work, for Broome County to do this work, they can't, right? Because we're the ones that hold this information of our Rotary clubs and our Lions clubs and radio stations. So everybody here, anything that anybody here can feed in. So we have a sign-up sheet in the front. If you have, I think most people have signed up. But if there's anybody new here, we'll send you links to those Google spreadsheets. We have a calendar. We have a map that we put together to show where all the things are. So, yeah, and the more information that we have on that, the better. And then the next really big step is the presentation that Adam explained. We need volunteers to help with those. And I think we're pretty good in Chenango County. We have such a tight-knit group of people, so we're all like, we sort of filled in. But Otsego and Delaware, Dennis Higgins has single-handedly booked
Amazing work, Dennis.
events in Otsego County, but he needs help. He can't be.
The elves did it.
In a few years, you may have all the help you need, but not yet.
And this is, I think all of us are sort of used to saying, oh, I can do it. But my feeling is that with all of this work, the more people get involved, the more they own it themselves, the more they become articulate about it. And this is what we need. So at every event, we're thinking we probably need, what did we have to just set up this small event?
More than we
5
needed,
or
but
6.
it was beautiful.
It was beautiful to have, right? So, I mean, to have 5 or 6 sort of core people, but the more who want to help and partake. There are tables and chairs to be set up, there are wires to be run, there are problems to be solved at the last minute, somebody to stand at the front desk, help. So all of these, so anybody, and we have sign-in sheets, not sign-in sheets, but sign-up sheets that list all of the events that are listed on the website, and also on the sheets that we have, flyer sheets, which I encourage everybody to take and just spread around. They're not complete. We're hoping for another 3 to 4 venues in Delaware, but anybody who wants to sign up, and it can be, I've put at the end, available for, it can be available for dropping off a plate of cookies, and then taking off. It can be, I'll get there at an hour before and leave an hour after. It can be anything in between. So, or I'll just help spread the word. But to be available at the events to help with chairs and anything. So there'll be lead people at the events who know what's going on, and or the contact people. But we need backup. Good. Do you want to add anything, Paige?
Just gratitude for everybody.
Gratitude. Oh my goodness.
Couple of final hands up here, Sue and Ken, or Ken and Sue. Here, you know what? Closer.
Yeah, several items. It would be helpful when we do have an event, if we could have a list of the types of jobs that you need help with. Secondly, talking about newspaper coverage. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And if you have some articles, standard things that you could send to us, if you're not doing it yourselves, we'll see that it gets done. Also, if we're able to find more venues for you, or at least a contact person for it, should I send that information to Paige and Trevor?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you, thank you.
I just wanted to clarify something I said before, and I'm looking at item 22 on the solar glossary draft. The first sentence, one has to be cautious with tax credits. The first sentence says, with this plan, instead of paying for solar system, you pay a fixed monthly amount. That's not necessarily true. you can pay the entire cost up
Right,
front
you're right,
of the lease. And then that's an out-of-pocket expense and therefore qualifies for a tax credit. If you insist on paying it off over the 20 years to the company, then you'd have to really get a clever tax advisor to advise you. On the other hand, if a person doesn't want to pay out of their own pocket, they can still take advantage of the upfront payment by, for example, taking a loan from the local bank. If it's a home equity loan, the mortgage interest is deductible, and then it is an upfront out-of-pocket cost. Okay? So, just be careful of that. Okay?
You have actually inspired me. I think we may add, if we can, I'm not promising this, but I think we may try and find ourselves a tame finance person who is not a solar person, as such, to join us for some of these Focus on Finance, because what we get at Focus on Finance are people who understand the solar end of it, not what you just said, which is more the tax end of it. And neither the solar installers nor myself are going to get in front of an audience and say that, even if we know it, because that could get us in trouble. So I'm going to fix that. But I think the answer is going to be to get somebody who is in the profession who can talk about the options. As a professional, they will obviously know nothing about any individual's tax situation, but so what? They can talk about these kinds of contingencies. So thanks for that.
Just a simple question, and that is, I need to know the difference between a launch event and the workshops that we're putting on.
Well, a launch event, you ain't gonna get that PowerPoint. The launch event is not all business. Launch event, we actually need to talk about the installer's role at the launch event, but the launch event is largely gonna be a press and party. So, short and sweet as far as the words are concerned. Lots of good Belgian ale, and so the community meetings, on the other hand, are gonna be a little bit more like this. A lot of talk, a lot of Q&A. The launch event is sort of the bookend that comes at the beginning as opposed to the celebration that would come at the end. It's kind of a similar thing. Thank you all. I think we're probably, are we done? All right. Thank you very much. I'm not going away yet. Let's turn off the microphones.